Be the right club. Be the right club today. Yes!
Again, has to be careful of the speed. What a comeback season for Hal Sutton. Come right back toward the hole. How about in? That's the second eagle he's made it for this week.
17 years later, Hal Sutton is the Players' Champion.
He's got it going right at the flagstick. It'll be up. It is.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Be the Ride Club Today podcast. Hal, how was Colorado?
Went to Colorado to Vail the last few days and enjoyed the nice weather, no humidity, lower temperatures, and then went to the airport in Denver yesterday, and I was reminded of why I enjoy not traveling anymore. I had an 8-hour wait for mechanical problems on an airplane and finally got to bed at 2:30 last night. So
Dark and early.
yeah.
Did you have crazy off-topic question? But did you have any crazy issues with traveling when you were playing on tour? Like any crazy delays that? I mean, you guys get there so early that it doesn't mess with you too much. But
Well, being traveling out of Shreveport, I had a lot of those kind of things because you couldn't nonstop anywhere but to Dallas or Houston or
it reminds me
Atlanta.
It reminds me of the comedian Ron White says the Shreveport Airport Hair Care and Tire Center or whatever. He was talking about Flagstaff. I always remember that.
Well, you know, if you can one stop anywhere, usually you don't have that much trouble. But whenever you got to stop and get on another airplane, you got twice as many airplanes that can have mechanical.
For sure. So this podcast we're going to talk about preparing for tournaments. We had one of our longtime students playing a really big one and have some success. Travis Vick finished in the top 4, got beat in the semis at the USAM. Talk about, obviously you won the USAM. Talk about what that tournament kind of meant to you and his finish.
Well, let's start with Travis. Let's not start with me. You know, Travis has had a summer that is, built. And he's had ups and downs, ebbs and flows. That's just golf, and people out there, y'all need to understand that. It's not a constant climb like this. It's one of these deals that you hope the overall graph would look like it's a constant climb, but it's
like the stock market.
Exactly, it is.
Hopefully it goes up.
That's exactly what you hope for. And Travis has had that kind of summer. He started out at Sunny Anna and had a chance to win at Sunny Anna, and then had a couple of finishes at the Northeast and Western that he wasn't proud of, and then comes back and probably medal play. He probably won the medal play part of the U.S. Amateur. He finished 5th in the first, or tied for 4th in the medal play, but he was way under in several of his matches, and never over par. And that's at Oakmont, by the way. Let me throw that in there.
Right. Talk a little, just briefly about Oakmont.
Well, Oakmont is one of the hardest golf courses in the world on the greens. I have not played it since they cut all the trees down, so my memory is of Oakmont with trees. I know it's wide open now, and that's a point I should make right there. I always played golf courses that were tree lined a lot better because that was the frame, and I knew right where I was supposed to hit it. To me, golf courses that are open, I always struggled to aim it where I wanted to aim it. I had to take more time trying to be precise in aiming something that is just wide open territory. You're shaking your head. You had trouble with that?
100%. Precise targets, because, and two, what I found on those, it was kind of like desert golf. You see a line, you're going to take it at this cactus, and you get over it, and you look up, and it's like, okay, where'd it go? Like, what's my line again, It
looks different because you're looking at it from back there, and now all of a sudden you're up here.
That's exactly right. Versus a Muirfield or a Champions or one of the older Southern Hills where you look up and it's telling you where to go the whole time.
Well, and this takes me back to the old adage. Trevino said, some dad walked up and said, my son shoots 67 every day on the home golf course. He said, I think he can be pro. And Trevino says, well, when he can go shoot 67 at a different golf course every day, then he can be pro. Yeah. The truth is, whether you're open or you're a tight golf course, when you play that golf course every day, you just kind of fall into lining it up in the right spot. Yep. But when you're a traveling player, whether you're an amateur player or you're a tour professional, I mean, you're seeing a golf course different every week. And you've got to really take ownership in being responsible to that shot, not that day, not that week, but each and every shot. I talk about being CEO of your game. That is validated on each and every shot you play. And I can assure you, everybody out there listening, you've never played golf that way, where you took validation, where you said, I'm going to validate that I'm the CEO of the decision-making in this golf game every shot.
And then committing to that decision.
And then committing to that decision.
So on that point, how many rounds of golf do you think you played in your lifetime where you were 100% locked in and committed over every shot?
I'm not sure I ever played a single round where I was – I mean, that's the goal, and I understand that, and I'm trying to do that. But there are various things that make us doubt. And, you know, sometimes I didn't even recognize what made me doubt. I'm fighting that. That's the invisible ghost that we're all fighting with. I think this is so powerful if y'all are really listening to this. I mean, we're all fighting with a ghost. That's why we love this game, because it appears and then it's gone. It appears and then it's gone. And, you know, the best players in the world have more control over that, but you need to realize even the best players in the world don't have total control of that.
Right, and I think it's such a powerful statement, the fact that you just said you're not sure if you ever played a round of golf where you were completely locked in over every shot. And it's funny, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. I played in a tournament, first tournament I played in like 7 or 8 years last week, and my ultimate goal was to pick a plan and then completely commit to it. Everything we've been talking about, I was like, all right, I'm going to go, because I don't know how I'm going to hit it. I'm going with this goal. And there, I can look back and shots I mishit, I feigned a little bit right or pulled a little bit left. I could feel like I didn't quite let it go. It wasn't, there was a little bit of a steer, a little bit of a quick thought of right or left or whatever the, let's call it a distraction or the flinch, whatever it was. And like you said, there's so many variables, whether it was a gust of wind, whether it was you heard a tee shot right at the top of your backswing all over 3 holes over, whether it was don't hit it left, whether it was, that backswing felt kind of weird. Like, our brains can go into so many different places in such a short period of time. And, you know, the fact that you won 14 times on the PGA Tour and one of the best ball strikers to ever play this game, and you said you weren't completely locked in over every shot. I don't think there's enough people that understand just what it takes to do that and what being completely committed to it actually means.
Well, you know, I've said this on here multiple times, but I'm going to say it one more time. I would play somewhere between 25 and 30 tournaments a year. And where I really felt like I had command over my golf game, maybe 2 or 3 tournaments that I actually felt, okay, I might win this week. I've got that much control. The rest of the time, I'm managing whatever I've got. And when I say managing it, I know the tendencies that I'm having at the moment. I know, let's just take this. I was talking to a guy this morning that was talking about he's pulling his short irons. And, you know, I can guarantee you that body slowed down, shaft rotation took over, trying to knock them down a little bit, and left of the target all the time. And I said, so you're having trouble controlling your short irons. Are you missing them left? 85, 90% of them, yes, I'm missing left. Well, that's a dead giveaway that he's rotating the face shut and body slowed down. So they're not matching. Both those rotations are not matching. And that happened to me all the time. I could walk down the range on the tour, and you could look at every right-handed player, and the longer they played, the further they aimed it to the right. The body slowed down, arms and hands could still be fast. So how do you fix that? Realize it and aim a little bit further to the right. Fix it next week. Right now, this is what I got. This is what I can count on, and I got to manage this.
Can I survive?
Can I survive? If you're the captain of your ship, all the things you know and everything else, the ship is going down, you got to save lives. I got this. Let me do this right now.
You know, and the fascinating part with all this is just how do you assess post shot? What happens after I hit a bad shot? Was it lack of commitment? Was it did I have a precise plan? Okay, so I'm hitting a little bit of a pull. I'm just gonna aim a little bit right, 10 feet right, and just hit my little what feels like a draw, a little bit of a pull, and then I get over it and I fan it out to the right. What's the assessment, right? Because like I've always said on here, I always went back to, oh, my golf swing sucks. I need to go see my instructor. I need to go fix my golf swing. When a lot of it wasn't quite locked in the whole time. It was just a little bit of it, like I said, a guide to steer a lack of commitment. And I think, Hogan said it all the time. He was going to hit, if he hit one perfect shot or whatever his famous saying was, if he hit one perfect shot. But I think it was Hogan that also said he was going to hit 6 or 7 bad shots around. He allowed himself to hit 6 or 7 bad shots around. And to me, if you can be completely locked in, completely committed, you're allowed to have 7 mechanical issues, mechanical bad swings, right, where it just goes offline. But you cannot have 7 complete lack of commitment, call them brain farts, because that's the only thing we can control. The only thing we can control is how committed we are to every shot, every golf swing.
So I think I can safely make this comment. I quit playing competitively, let's say 20 years ago. Up until that point, during that stretch, I played with all the best players in the world, whether they were European, whether they were in. I can't tell you one single great player that I felt was never there mentally or ventured in and ventured out. They were there every day mentally. They might not have physically been there every day. Let me give you a great example of that. Seve Ballesteros, mechanically very unsound, was always there, competitive as he could be. And, but think about all the bad shots he hit in majors that he won.
But wouldn't you also agree, too, though, that a lot of the bad shots that he hit in majors weren't – I mean, he had no idea where the ball was going. So as far as committing to it, he probably had some, obviously, fear of, where it's going and wasn't completely locked in on every one of those shots as far as, here's what I'm going to try and do, and I'm going to commit to that.
I think possibly. I can't answer that for sure.
Sure, no one knows but him.
But here's what I will say. He expected to hit some of them, and he wasn't shocked by them, and he committed to the next shot. Yeah. And, I just think, I'm alluded to this a little bit. I'm from an era that we didn't have TrackMan and we didn't have cameras that could see club face and everything else. And, I had to play the game a lot more by feel than kids today have to play it. And there's a couple of things that go along with that. I didn't expect to have to be perfect because I knew we couldn't even quantify perfect. We didn't even know what perfect was. And how far off were we on what some people thought perfect was? Mm-hmm. So now we can quantify things. And with that comes, I might get there. And I don't know what it's like to play under those kind of conditions. I gave myself some leniency when I knew I was going to hit some bad shots. Right. And I did. I expected them. And I wasn't shocked when I did it. I knew I had to go keep the ship from sinking. And, I think when kids hit a bad shot now, this is something to think about. I'm not saying that anybody out there does this, but something to think about. They immediately say, what's wrong? Because we can quantify all this. And I didn't say what's wrong. I let it go, and I went and played the next shot to the best of my ability. Now, if I had weeks where that whatever plagued me, then I knew something was wrong, that I had to fix it. But I didn't jump the ship over one bad shot.
How many shots would it take for you to make an adjustment in the course of a round?
Listen, I can probably count how many times I made an adjustment in a round on one hand.
Interesting.
And I'd be willing to bet you that players from my era didn't make adjustments much in a round. We went with what we had, and we tried to manage what we had. You start making adjustments in the middle of a round. I guess today, because of all the what we were just talking about, being able to quantify why things happen the way they do. People think they can make adjustments and have expectations for what's going on. During my era, I could not do that because I didn't know how much of what to do. And so I was going to, and think about this in your own game before any of this. Okay, if I'm going to do something different, I'm going to make sure I can feel it, which causes usually an over-exaggeration. And
the back and forth is what's tough if you're pulling it and you start blocking it right. But let's say, because I know, even if it was when you were struggling with driver a little bit or struggling with your swing a little bit, when you were hitting it, you hit one right off the first tee, you hit one right off the second tee, you hit another one right off the third tee. Is it all right, dang it, I'm going to get through this one, I'm going to release it a little harder, I'm going to do whatever? I mean, was it maybe just a small little intention tweak? It's not necessarily, a golf swing tweak.
I fought whether I should speed up or slow down.
Yeah.
That's what you just described.
Yeah.
And, I always felt like if I sped up my body, it was okay. But slowing the arms down was tough. And because there's no intention. Once you start slowing something down, there's less intention to what you're trying to do. And that's really powerful. I hope y'all just heard what I just said. I mean, I believe intention to do something, which is what we've been talking about, is the most important thing we can talk about when it comes to golf. If you have an intention that you're going to do, then you have something that is a decision.
Yeah, trying to do something versus trying not to do
exactly.
something.
Exactly. So now if I've got that, I can commit to doing that. And we can see in just a minute whether it was a successful decision or a failure of a decision. And I will guarantee you, everybody out there fears failure. And I promise you, in order to be the best player you can possibly be, you've got to stop fearing failure. It's going to happen. We're all going to fail. We're not going to hit every shot perfect. Yeah. So Hogan said to me one time over lunch one time, he said, I asked him point blank, how many shots do you hit in a round? You're the best ball striker ever. How many shots in a round do you hit exactly like you envisioned? His answer was 5 or 6. There's the best ball striker that ever lived. Mm-hmm. And he told me, point blank, 5 or 6 came off the way I envisioned in my mind. Now, that's about, for a man that practiced more than anybody else in the world.
Yeah. It definitely lowers everybody else. It should lower everybody else's
we just did a podcast not long ago on intentions.
Or expectations.
Expectations.
Yeah, right.
And
so when you were a little off, you felt like the speeds or your rhythm was a little bit off, and so it was either speed it up or slow it down a little bit. I always felt like for me, if I hit it right, I was guidey. If I hit it left, I was too fast. And I'm not talking anything specific, but just the way I just got a little bit out of whack and got a little bit fast. So I could see myself making adjustments similarly to that. Like if I was hooking it, I would try and, let's use percentages. I would go to 90% instead of 100. Instead of being at 100%. But go ahead.
So can I add something to what you just said? See, I could build a case for the exact opposite of that. So. That's speaking in arms perspective. See, if I was more of a body player. So if I left it right, I felt like my body was too fast. And if I hit it left, I felt like my body was too slow. Because I felt like my arms were swinging the same way every time. So that's just in the perspective of the player, I'm not saying you're right or you're wrong. I'm just saying that's what I felt.
And what I'm talking about is not necessarily from the body segments. I'm talking about like if my 8-iron goes 160, that's 100%. That's me swinging it at full, whatever full is.
Okay.
And I felt like if I got fast, and we see it a lot in here too. Like if somebody starts to go, most of the guys that swing really fast will tend to fight more lefts than the guys that swing just from pure speed standpoint. We speed up an 8-iron, it's going to tend to want to draw a little bit more than it is to want to fade or go right.
Right.
But for me, it was if I needed to take right out of play, it was go faster. If I went faster, I had a hard time blocking it right. If I went slower, I could then guide it, leave the face open, and that was. And it, again, not so much. my hips, I've always had fast hips. My body was always too fast. And so, like, if I slowed down, I would get probably a touch more stuck and keep the face open. And if I kept it going, it would close it down. But I think the overall discussion on, and this has kind of gone off topic a little bit, but how to manage it during a round where the first couple of shots are bad. Because one of the things I keep talking to about some of these kids is, look, if you hit a terrible tee shot on the first hole, your commitment on the second hole should be the exact same way it was on the first. Like, you shouldn't change your objective because you hooked it off the planet on the first hole. Like, that's one swing. Like, you got a little nervous and made a bad swing. It doesn't mean you've got to try and hold the face open and not hook it off the second hole. Or if you hit the best drive of your life on one, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to drive it perfect for the rest of the day either. Like, the commitment's still the same. The process still the same.
Well, we just couldn't quantify things, and I come from that era where we couldn't. And I played by feel, and
But we're still, even with all the technology, we know a lot more now than we did. But there's still a lot of guesswork being done. A lot of the collision of the golf ball and a lot of that, like what the body's exactly doing. There's still guesswork. We're still learning. There's going to be more advances 20 years from now. They're going to blow our mind, and we wouldn't even have a clue about it right now.
So if we could have quantified during my era of speed, I would say I was never. I didn't have a fast body, and I didn't have fast arms.
Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing I'd say about you too. Yeah, you were always, let's use the term, and I'm using this in air quotes, connected. You were always very connected, and your misses, like, I had a lot of stretch. I was always all over the place.
Yeah, I treated golf like that door opening and closing right there. And, it worked for me. I was never what I would say was the longest player on the tour.
Yeah.
That wasn't my goal, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there was never, think about this, there was never a day that I woke up and thought, I need to be longer.
Yeah.
And there's not a day that a kid doesn't wake up and think he needs to be longer right now.
Right.
And, so I'm not sure that what I thought necessarily plays into today.
Right.
But there is a combination of understanding how the arms and the body rotation work together.
Sure.
That as teachers,
sure,
we've got to figure out if we're getting there or not getting there with a player.
100%. And that's where the data comes in. And if the path and the face are too far offline, and then we got to figure, or too far out of whack, then we got to figure out the why. Is it an arms, a body, wrist, tilt, like all that stuff. So let's segue a little bit into, and we talked about in the round or in a tournament round, but let's. We mentioned Travis playing in the USAM, had a great week at the USAM. And then I played in a tournament a couple weeks ago, first tournament I played in a long time. I did okay. I shot 74, 73. I finished 10th. It was a little STPJ event down here. Finished 10th out of 70 players. Made a couple of big numbers. I will say this. I was 5 over after 5. I started double, par, triple. I was 5 over, and I was going into like the 15th hole. And I got on that tee, and I was like, man, if I shoot in the mid-80s today, I'm never going to hear the end of this. I am never going to hear the end of this. I even had some text messages afterwards saying that they were going to give me a lot of grief if I kept going. But it was interesting. I told myself I'd hit really one bad shot. I kind of hooked a tee shot on the hole before. And I said, you know what? Keep committing, keep doing what you're doing. And I went into this event. My goal was this. Have a precise plan before every shot. And then I wanted to, my saying over the ball was be surprised. And a lot of people would think be surprised, that sounds weird, right? Like, why would you think that? But what I wanted from the time I took the club back to contact, I wanted to be so locked into what I was trying to do that at contact, I felt like I did it. And if I looked up and it went offline, I was surprised. And that was kind of the motto I went with. And the first day, my commitment level was great. I really did. I did a great job committing to it. Like I said, I was 5 over early, and then after that, I played the last 13 holes, 3 under par, bogey free. Missed a couple putts coming in, so I shot 2 over, and then I doubled my last hole the last round to shoot 1 over, to shoot 73. Finished 10th. But overall, my commitment was awesome, and that was what I was trying to do. And what's the word I'm looking for? I kind of applied it to in here, where if I was hitting a ball into a blank screen, I wanted to be surprised if it went offline. I didn't want to like know right at contact if I blocked it right or bailed on it per se. And it was a good little way for me to stay locked in the whole time. And I hit a lot of really good shots, and it was fun. It was a good week. I'm probably going to play again next week, and it's fun to kind of get back out there. One of the things that tournament kind of led me into thinking, though, was like, look, this is the first event I played in a while. I'd committed to it about a week before, and the lead up to tournaments, the nervousness, the anxiousness, all that stuff. And one of the points I want to get across, and I want to talk about with you a little bit, is if you guys are at home and you're playing in 1 or 2 events a year, it's really hard to assess your performance based off of you basically playing in 2 Super Bowls a year, and that's all. You're not playing in the playoffs, you're not playing in the regular season, you don't get a preseason. So it's either boom or bust, and you only get 2 chances to assess, versus somebody like you, versus these tour players that play in 30 to 35 events a year and can look at the bigger picture. I think it's huge, because there's so many guys that come in here and say, I've got a mid-am qualifier that I'm getting ready for in October, and it's April. You're like, okay, are you playing in any events leading up to that? No, this is the only one I'm playing in. Man, that's a recipe for a long fall if you don't go out and play well. It's hard to put so much onus on one round of golf.
Well, I couldn't agree more. It's been so long since I played golf where, I was playing 2 or 3 tournaments a year. I can't even remember that far back, to be honest with you. And we live in a world of what have you done for me lately right now. And let's use Ricky Fowler. I think Ricky Fowler is a great one to talk about right now. The way I played golf, and if I were coaching Ricky Fowler, this would be exactly what I would tell Ricky right now. So if any of you know Ricky and you can tell him this, go tell him. There was 2 sets of goals in Hal Sutton's life. There was a short-term goal, which was a lot less important to me than the long-term goal. So much of the time, we get locked into the short-term goals because of what I said earlier. We live in what have you done for me lately. So earlier in this, we talked about how your golf game needed to be like the stock market. We wanted the trend to be upward, but we realized there was going to be some down. The world wants to talk about any down that happens. And if you played the stock market, you hate any downward motion of it, and you love and ecstatic over any upward motion. That's the way a golf does us right there. So you cannot get caught up in the short term other than a specific thing that's happening that might hurt my long-term goal. Then I'll work on that. But I don't get so caught up in a specific tournament failure necessarily, unless it was something that was terribly embarrassing, unless I wasn't myself, unless something intervened into it that, I lost control. Talking about your game, you had, when you simplified your expectation and put that one good shot, string it next to another good shot, realizing that there's going to be some misses in there, then you were able to settle it down and achieve what you thought was okay for not having played in so long.
Yep.
And I think that's the way everybody needs to approach the game. You said something to me earlier, I'll just segue into this, about did I prepare differently for majors than I did for other tournaments. When I did, I got off track.
Yeah.
I tried to prepare differently for the Masters, and I never had a decent. I played decent there one time, and I always tried to prepare differently, and Augusta is a little bit different, but trying to prepare differently made me a different player.
Didn't make you Hal Sutton.
It didn't make me Hal Sutton,
That's right.
And so therefore I didn't have any real intention when I went there, and I was, not able to commit because I didn't have a real intention.
Do you, and this goes into the Augusta question, do you allow yourself to prepare for the golf course? Do you prepare for certain tee shots? Do you prepare for, I'll ask it past tense, did you? Because it sounds like you did a little bit with Augusta, maybe trying to hit it higher or whatever you thought.
Yeah, I did at Augusta, and I would say looking back on it, it was a failure.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't advise that. To me, I had some good U.S. Open finishes. I never won the U.S. Open. I had some decent British Open finishes. Never won the British Open.
Yeah.
Played well in the PGA, but they were all different golf courses. Some of them I didn't even know them well enough to prepare for them.
And that's a great point too. Like I played the tournament last week blind, and so didn't play practice round. And obviously I knew it for the second day, but that's the being comfortable with the golf course. Just like Trevino mentioned the kid that shoots 67 on his home golf course. He shoots 67 on his home golf course because he's comfortable with the golf course.
Right.
That's why you see the same tour players play well at certain events each year, because just the golf course sets up for them.
Can I make a point right there?
Yeah.
So, I don't know whether I'm on the 13th or 14th hole of life right now. So, doesn't really matter. None of us really know that. But here's the truth. I do know that my competitive golf days are over. So trying to be the best in the world is not something that I care about anymore.
Yeah.
So if I were going to play a golf course every day now, I'd like to play a golf course that I can actually have some fun on and beat a little bit, every now and then remind myself of the player I used to be, rather than playing on a golf course that is so hard that I'm so disgusted because I used to be able to hit that shot and I can't now. And, that's kind of where my life is at, and that's probably where some of y'all's life needs to be. So find a golf course you can have fun on,
So
too.
you're saying and play the more experienced tees and not don't necessarily.
Hey, I lightly treaded over that maybe a forward tee might serve you better.
So Michael Breed mentioned, going back to the Augusta talk, Michael Breed mentioned that today's game, these players are imposing their will on the golf course instead of the golf course forcing them to hit certain shots. It almost sounds like you agree with today's game a little bit more in that regard, as far as you should have, as Hal Sutton, you should have imposed your will on Augusta National. You should have hit the shots that you were comfortable with, versus trying to conform to Augusta.
So here's the truth, and I've said this several times. We all have a fingerprint, and that fingerprint doesn't change. It's the same all the time. That's why they get your fingerprint. I was under the pretense that I was good enough that I could change my fingerprint. And I'll be honest with you, seldomly did I ever see that happen with a player.
And it goes back to the weaknesses and the strengths comment that you make all the time.
But, I think players have places that they feel more comfortable with. Like, I just felt good at TPC.
Yeah.
It fit my game. It fit my eye. I didn't feel like I had to do anything different other than be Hal Sutton to play well there.
And I think that goes back to this whole idea that if you can be a world-class player and be almost as good as you want to be, dominating at TPC, not being as comfortable at the Masters, but if the stars aligned, you could have definitely won there. Like, you really could have. There was nothing that was keeping you from winning there. But if you tried to change too much towards Augusta, it could completely ruin your chances at TPC and can completely get you to where you can't play on tour anymore. Trying to be too perfect.
That's the game that we all love.
Yeah.
I mean, guilty.
Yeah, me too.
And I think everybody out there is guilty. And I think the faster we can understand that, the quicker we can become the player that we dream about being. We all are so no matter how good you get, I've seen this happen with everybody in the world. There's no finish line.
No.
There's no time where you actually say, that's it, I'm done. Look at Tiger Woods. Look at Jack Nicklaus, the two best player, arguably, that's ever played the game, and they never, in their own mind, reached their full potential.
Look at Bernhard Langer.
Yeah.
Look at how hard he's been working to be one of the greatest players to ever play on the Champions Tour, one of the best players ever. But look at he didn't just hang him up and say he's done. He's been fighting and grinding his way on that tour for a long time.
You're never happy. You want. It's not you want another trophy on the mantle. There's no telling what Langer's trophy room looks like. Yeah. It's not because of money. It's because
just want to compete and
relevance. That's what it's about. I want to remain relevant. Let me tell you something. Everybody that's out there that is facing retirement, you're looking at him right here. I am one of those guys that's facing retirement. And let me tell you what, it's not very appealing because I'm not relevant anymore. And, so Langer and all these guys that continue down that path, they're staying relevant because they're winning. Yeah. If they were out there and not winning, it wouldn't be as relevant.
Right. So how did you, from tournament to tournament, if you didn't hit it as well as you would have liked, or post-tournament, you're kind of recap, you're kind of assessing, post-recap assessment, you saw a weakness or thought you weren't great in a certain area. Did you chalk it up as, it was just this week, I'll be better next week? Or did you ever say, okay, I'm going to go work on that? How do you assess that?
I assessed it differently all the time. If there was, I mentioned earlier, if it was embarrassing, embarrassment has decision-making time. And, embarrassment gets our attention. If it was one of these things that nothing really stood out and nothing got our attention, I kept my mind on the long-term goal.
So say you shot 72, 73 and missed the cut by a couple.
I kept my mind on the long-term goal.
Okay.
Now, the world, once you reach a level where the world is assessing you, and certainly at the PGA Tour level, the world is assessing you. And some of the players that haven't really established themselves yet, their world isn't as big as the other world. Ricky Fowler's world is big, trust me. And they're assessing Ricky Fowler every week. And he's feeling that. I'm going to tell you something right now. He can't avoid feeling that.
Tommy Fleetwood would be another one.
Tommy Fleetwood would be another one. Yeah. Justin Rose has had a lot of that this year. Mm-hmm. They can't get caught up in that. They have to get caught up in the long-term goal.
Would you say get back to what makes them them?
Fingerprint.
Yeah, get back
fingerprint.
to the fingerprint.
Yes, because, that fingerprint got your attention to begin with.
Yep.
And then them trying to change it lost your attention.
Yep.
And that's your whole point.
Yep. One of the things I heard or read, I think, on social media a couple months ago was that, it might have actually been in a book, that golf is one of the few sports where we train harder leading up to an event than other sports. And I think we've talked about this a little bit on here, but did you, you obviously with the golf swing and stuff, you got to break off, if you've taken a couple weeks off or whatever, you got to break off the cobwebs and stuff. But, was there a pattern in your preparation? Was there a pattern in, playing more golf? Was there, what did you try to do? For listeners at home, let's say they play in 7 to 10 events in the summer, 7 to 10 events a year, a couple of club championships, some member guests. What would be a 101 class on tournament prep?
Play a lot.
Yeah.
I prefer playing a lot over practicing a lot. When I first went on the tour, I played all the time. As I began to get better and expectations got higher of me, I started practicing a lot. And so, one of the things the reason why people practice a lot, and you talked about how they say we prepare harder before a tournament than most other sports do, is this is such a feel game, and we get a feel, and we don't want to lose it. Yeah, and the only way we can assess whether we're ready or not is if we felt it on the last shot. Yeah. Think about what I'm saying to you, because this applies to each and every one of y'all out there.
Yeah, we're chasing comfort.
We're chasing comfort. That's right.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that Brett McCabe said last week about the brain. We don't like uncertainty, and and that's what I felt the whole time leading up to my event a couple weeks ago. It was like, I don't know what's going to happen, and my brain was going through and trying to help me figure it out, and it just leads to anxiousness. But we're chasing comfort, and the other thing I think that he mentioned that I think is great is that it doesn't matter how hard you prepare, you don't know exactly what you got till you get out there, and chances are it's going to be a little bit different than what you had on the practice tee or even in the money game at home with the boys.
Yeah,
it's going to be different, and it's up to us to manage it. It's up to us to weed our way through and go full circle back to what we always talk about: control what you can control. Control your process. Did you have a plan? Did you commit to the plan?
Well, I only have one thing that I could really do super well right now. I could be a hell of a caddy because I can't make my body do what I once used to, but my mind still knows what I need to be thinking and how I could do it best. And, it's a shame because my mind didn't understand when I was physically capable how to help me. And, it's really funny. I think Chase will attest to this. We talk to kids in here all the time, and we tell them some of the things that are the most brilliant things they've ever heard. And either it goes right over their head, or they could care less about it because their intention is on something else. They don't even know that we would know what they need to be thinking about. And you talk about frustrating.
Well, and I think I fell into this issue, and you probably did too earlier in your career. Like, the only thing I wanted from an instructor when I went to see him was to fix my issue that I had right then and there. And I thought that if they fixed it, then I would be fixed forever, right? But it doesn't. It just doesn't exist. Like, somebody comes in, I'm slicing the crap out of it. Well, okay, close the face a little bit, and then now you're going to be hooking it, and now it's just this ebb and flow of, the more I talk to guys like you, to Nick Price, to the guys we've had on here, like, the more I realize that we're never going to truly have control over the golf ball. Our mechanical motion, we're going to hit foul balls. Watch the guys on tour, we're going to hit bad shots. But over the course of our lifetime, from this point on, if you guys listen and catch anything that we say, if you can control your processes, your beliefs, your pre-shot routine, get a game plan, go commit to that game plan for the rest of your life to the best of your ability, you have a chance to be consistent in this crazy game.
I'm going to take it a little bit further than what you just said.
Go for it.
If you can control your mind and the process of your decision-making and commitment, I will guarantee you that your graph would look like this. If
you will get better.
You will get better. And if you come in here and we dissect your golf swing entirely, probably we can help you get better over the long haul if this gets better too.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I mean, it's tougher to make, especially the older you get. It's harder to make a swing change and make you a better player.
I think it's important. Let's dive into that a little bit. We've gone on a bunch of different tangents, but this is kind of fun. We said this, I think, in one of the other episodes a couple weeks ago. Everybody out there can lower their scores if their commitment gets better.
Right.
Like, that's a 100% true statement. Can everybody out there lower their scores by making swing changes? No, not necessarily. But I will say this. If they learn more about what makes their golf swing work, let's say matchups, how their swing matches up and the pieces that they need to have everything matched up, they'll have a better chance to manage their good, and they'll have to make their good last longer, and they'll have a better chance to get out of their bad. Like, that's the whole thing, I think, with golf instruction, is we've got to educate everybody on what makes their swing work and what happens when it's not working. But I also think if we were just going for pure performance, shooting lower scores, which is in the end the goal for 99% of the people, a lot of people want to come in here and just hit it better. They don't even care about their score. But most everybody else only cares about their score. If we're just chasing score, then yes, I do think the swing stuff will help, but the guaranteed lowering the scores, being more consistent with your score, is being as precise as you can with the mental game and being as committed as you can to every shot you hit. And you're nodding. And then I think the last little key is then understanding which issue caused the bad shot. I think I felt at that so bad. I was so bad at that I think this is what I preach to all the kids and parents now. Post-shot assessment is so flippin' important, because if it was mechanical, you're allowed to cuss your instructor out, cuss me out, cuss Hal out, whatever. Don't cuss Hal out. You can cuss me out.
No, you cuss. I've been cussed before.
But if it was mental, then you got to smack yourself. That's your fault, and it stops there.
So, Chase, I agree with everything you just said. But it's human to blame everybody else first before yourself.
Sure.
And that's where this whole thing falls down. And,
I guess the reason I say it that way is because I want everyone to be able to go through and be completely committed, and like I said, like I used, be surprised. What I want people to realize is the minute they decommit, everything stops and they've got to say, dadgummit, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to commit to the next one, and I'm going to commit to the next one, and I'm going to keep building on commitment. What I don't want is you hit a bad shot because you felt it, don't go left or don't go right or just had a brain fart, and then you say, oh, that golf swing was terrible. No, it wasn't terrible. Your mindset was terrible. You didn't execute what you're trying to do.
Well, it's easy to see this in somebody else, and most difficult for you to see it in yourself. You go to a PGA Tour event, I guarantee you right now, you can follow players, and they're both out there, not naming any names because it's changing from week to week. But there are players that you can follow and you watch, and it looks like they knew exactly what they were fixing to do before they hit every shot. And then there's other players that look like they didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
They never made a decision, and if they did make a decision, they were the wrong decisions. And, you know, I'm going to regress here a little bit and talk once again about Tiger Woods when he said he beat everybody with a C game. You know, that's the most rewarding time in a player's life, when they don't have what it takes physically and they just eat your lunch mentally. And that's the most agitating player that you can play with. Yeah. You think about your home golf course, and everybody, you get home and you tell your wife or whoever it is that you talk over with your golf game, this guy beats me every time and I'm a way better player. So what you're actually saying is he knows how to make a decision about the shot to play based on his fingerprint, and he's willing to commit to that, and you haven't been willing to do that yet. Yep. You're actually insulting yourself every time you say that and complimenting this other guy. And, you know, why not? This is the whole reason why I started Let's Talk Golf, because I wanted to talk about these sort of issues with people. These are things that you subliminally know, but you haven't really consciously thought about them yet. And how do I actually work my way out of this wet paper sack?
That's right. And how do I, when I played my best golf, why did I play my best golf? Because I was locked into this a little bit more than I was even aware of.
Exactly. And you admire people like that. You go to a PGA Tour event, you watch it on TV. That's all you see on TV, because that's all they show is the best players. And they're locked in. And you think everybody is locked in like that. They're suffering. They're having – I mean, look at Dustin Johnson. He shot 80-80 or something in one of the tournaments this year. Yeah. And, I mean, he wasn't locked in there. He was locked into mediocrity. Yeah. And
do you think it's easier to get locked in mentally when you don't have it all physically?
Well, if you care about the outcome.
Because it's almost by necessity. It's like the old saying, if you don't hit it good, your short game, or you putt better,
forced
or
into it. You're forced into it if you've got expectations of being a certain kind of player. Yeah. You know, that's the hardest part. That's why people have more of a long-term slump. You know, one of the nicest people I ever played golf with in my life was Chip Beck. And Chip Beck went through one of the longest slumps that I can remember any player that went through being as good a player as he. I mean, Chip Beck shot in 59 out there. Yeah. I mean, Chip was unbelievable player. And he went through a stretch where every round was in the 80s. And I'm sure Chip wouldn't mind me telling you all this story, but I would see him in the parking lot and say, Chip, how'd you play today? You know, we were all pulling for him because he was playing so poorly. Yeah. And he was such a great guy. And he said, oh, I didn't play any good today, but it's coming. I'm fixing to get it. And he had the best attitude in the world. And finally one day I said to him, I said, Chip, I admire you so much because you've got this kind of attitude. I said, I would be destroying my clubs at the back of the car right now. But, you know, I think Chip never lost sight of the overall plan. He brought his game back. And, you know, the world is constantly talking about a slump of a really good player. And they got you on this week-to-week evaluation. And when you get on that week-to-week evaluation, it just feels like the ship's going down and you can't do anything about it.
Jordan Spieth, Rory McIlroy. I mean, Jordan especially had a 2 or 3 year where it was, he was struggling. And again, it goes back to this for you guys playing at home, playing in 1 or 2 tournaments a year. Golf was never designed to only play in 1 or 2 tournaments a year. I mean, you can't play, you can't be a professional like you and play in 30 or 35, but you got to gear up for them. You got to be in the right state of mind.
So, how could you call yourself anything but a casual player if you're only going to play in 1 or 2 tournaments a year? I mean, you're not chasing the best you can be, and if you are, you're not trying to prove it to anybody.
Do you think when you were on tour, you didn't play in a lot of money games, or it didn't seem like you did outside of maybe practice rounds? Do you think money games are good preparation for tournaments?
Well,
do you think that's a step up from just a casual round at home?
I think that's a step up from a casual round. I can tell you, every time I played in a money game, unless it was a $5 game, we weren't worried about $50, but if it was $1,000, I didn't want to give one of my best friends $1,000 for him to brag about. He beat me out of $1,000.
Right. Just from the, let's just say, the added intensity to prepare for when the gun goes off or the nerves go get a little hotter running in tournaments and stuff.
I definitely didn't think it. I don't think it hurts any at all to play in money games.
Just kind of talking about more just best way to prepare.
I think the best way to prepare is to play a lot of golf.
Yeah.
I went through a stretch where I thought practicing was a lot of fun, and I have to be honest with you. At this juncture, just feeling a really solid golf shot feels really good to me. Nothing feels better to me. I'll say this out loud. Nothing feels better than just a precisely hit shot. When it comes off and you look up and it's doing exactly what you envisioned, the harmony for your body and your arms and your mind all come together at impact to create that. I mean, nothing feels better than that. And the more times you can do that, the better you feel about yourself. And I will guarantee you that practicing doesn't give you that. Playing is what gives you that. And I was going to make this point earlier, and I don't think I finished the point. When I first went out there, I played every day. I'd come home, I'd play all the time. And I'd go out by myself and I'd hit 4 or 5 shots, different shots. Yeah. On the golf course where there's a flag, there's a bunker, there's something that I had to have an intention, make a decision, and try to pull it off. So on the practice range, you've got to envision all of that stuff. And, you forget to envision it. You just start going through the motions and everything else. But the golf course forces you into doing that. Yeah. So I'd play a lot more golf.
That kind of goes back to the block versus the random practice that we've talked about. It's kind of a lost art that we've talked about too. The going out and playing 3 or 4 shots on a hole, just because, especially with COVID and how busy golf courses are, like that's kind of frowned upon. But when you were home, you didn't play in many matches or you were kind of out doing it by yourself.
No, I didn't. When I went home, I played so much golf all the time. When a buddy called me and said, "Hey, let's go play Saturday," I had a really good friend that was a lawyer that was a really good player in Shreveport, and I said to Jay one time, I said, "Jay, do you take depositions on Saturday?" No. And it kind of put it into perspective. One of the things that, we also need some downtime to rest. Yeah. And I took, whenever I went home, the first 2 or 3 days that I went home, I would rest and not do anything. And then I would start back into doing whatever my goals were right after that.
How did you prepare? Were there tournaments that you played in that you can remember where you didn't feel like you were all there mentally, like you weren't locked in? I mean,
absolutely.
That stick out, or any of them that stick out? I mean, you've talked about Disney, but that was more just could have been bad play at the wrong time, and but was there any tournaments you could think of where it was like, man, mentally I just wasn't there? And if you don't have to think specifically, I guess, but how did you the next week get more prepared? Like, how do we? I guess what I'm trying to get into is, without playing in tournaments, how can we practice our mental game without doing it when you're nervous or casual rounds, like how do we practice and get better at all the commitment stuff that we've been harping on so much in this episode?
Well, that's why I went out by myself all the time. Golf is a social game, and most of y'all play with the same group all the time, and you are pretty social when you're playing golf. I was never that way. I went out, whether it was with friends or whatever it was, and I went into what I was doing. One of the things that this is a personal battle that you have with this game. This is not a social battle. You're not fighting this together. You're fighting this individually. You're on your own journey.
Yep.
And, it always amazed me how Trevino and Fuzzy Zeller could hee-haw all the time, and they'd go in and out.
Flip the switch, yeah.
Yeah, they flipped the switch. They were doing something this second and then being a comedian the next second. And I just couldn't do that. I had to, again.
It wasn't your, I was going the same way.
Fingerprint.
Yeah, it wasn't your fingerprint.
Yeah. I think it's an inventory. We've talked about this the first episode of Let's Talk Golf. Take an inventory of your game and yourself.
Yeah.
Know who you are. Know what you can expect from you. Know what you should expect from you. And, and then evaluate based on that. So you'll recognize real quickly if you're off for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But, I've said this before, is the answer in the answer, or is the answer in the question?
Yeah.
Do you ask yourself questions?
Yeah.
That's most of assessment comes from asking the proper questions.
Yeah, so, a good way to practice this at home, if you're not sure about if your pre-shot routine is good enough, or if you're thinking about the right things before the shot, say the pre-shot stuff needs some help. Imagine that, Hal Sutton's your caddy, and he's sitting there saying, okay, what's our target? What's the distance? What do we got to the front edge? What do we got to the back edge? Okay, where's the trouble? Like Brett said, we're not trying to block out the trouble in our mind. We're saying, hey, that bunker over there stinks. We don't want to hit it there. We've identified it. Now we're going to move our target to the right of the bunker, or to the left of the bunker, or to the left of the water, whatever it is. But you've got Hal Sutton sitting there asking you all these questions. What are we trying to do? What's our goal? What's what's the objective here? And then really as a player, you're the only one that can say after you hit the shot, did you commit to it? That's it. There's no one else that can do it. And then if the shot didn't do what you wanted to do, again, was it commitment? Was it golf swing?
No one can say for sure except the player himself whether they actually executed with commitment.
Correct.
So I want to bring this up right now. A good friend that I had on the tour who was just inducted into the Hall of Fame, I think, Calvin Pete. Great player. But one of the biggest reasons he was a great player was because he had golf ball on his bag. Golf ball was Raymond Floyd's caddy, and Calvin and golf ball were big buddies, and golf ball was super smart, golf savvy. And, Calvin executed, golf ball made all the decisions.
Yeah.
And
nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that as long as one person does it.
Yeah.
So many times, golf ball would be the only one that read the putt, and he'd tell him where to hit it. Beautiful part about that is if you're gonna give in to that, then you're going to be committed to executing the decision that he just made. Now, if you're the decision maker, this is really very important point. If you're going to be the decision maker and the person that execute, you got to get in harmony together, which is what we're really talking about in commitment. It's easier to be one or the other than it is to be both. That's where the breakdown comes. You agree with that?
Yeah, because then if you miss, if you miss, then who was at fault? Which one was at fault? Was it the read? Was it the stroke?
Right.
Because you're going to have a tendency to blame one or the other. Like Nicklaus always blamed the read, which was the best way to do it if you're going to be both. I always blame my stroke. It was always mechanical for me, right? And so I wasn't quite Calvin, but I've told you this before. I always played my best when I had a really good green reader as a caddy, because I would let go of that and just, okay, I commit to that. And I was completely fine if we misread it. Like, I could handle that because I was going to misread them anyway. But it helped me kind of separate the divide between the two, and I could always just let go.
So the real point here that we're making is that you got to be both, but not at the same time. So you do make the decision, but then you become the guy that executes.
Yeah, you put the decision maker back in the office, back in the box,
right?
And now you go execute.
And you can be both that way,
yeah.
But there's separation between the two. But if you get up over the shot and you're still making decisions,
yeah,
then you're not going to be fully committed to that shot.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I hope, one of my goals is that we can help y'all through this process. It took me years to learn this. And, it's all I got now. And I'm hopeful that we can give this to you and it be beneficial to you and your golf game. And you could, give us a shout out and say, hey, y'all really helped our game, because that's all Chase and I really want to do is help people.
And every time that we get a comment or a review or whatever, we always smile and talk about it. Hey, did you see what he said, or did you see what she said? That's exactly what we're trying to do, and it's powerful, and it's fun because this game it's impossible. This game is flipping impossible, but I keep going back to, if we can just continue to control the things we can control. And it's why I told you 2 or 3 weeks ago I was kind of getting the itch to start playing it a little bit more. And I'm probably going to play again next week, so I'll have some more.
Why are you saying probably?
Probably, yeah. I got to sign up here. In
See, is he committed?
So I'll have more stories. Hopefully I'm not 5 over through 5 like I was. I still laugh at that. I was on the 15th tee thinking, man, if I don't turn this ship around, this ship's sinking and I got to survive. And if I don't,
since you made that point, we'll close with this point.
Yeah.
When I first went on the tour, I'd pick up the paper Monday morning.
Yeah.
And I'd scale down to wherever my name was at.
Yeah.
And I'd see how much I made. And here's the last thing that I would think. Man, that 5-footer that I missed on whatever hole cost me $3,000. And I went through about 3 or 4 months of doing that. Yeah. And I finally, it dawned on me one day, this is stinking thinking.
Yeah, that's bad.
So here's the way I would scale across there. The last 5-footer that I made me $300 or $400 or $5,000 or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, right.
I would appeal to you that you start thinking about how you finished the round instead of how you started the round, because that keeps this graph going the direction that we want it to go. But the minute we start thinking about the failures, the graph starts tipping back downward. Yeah. We'll leave y'all with that thought right there, because that's very powerful.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit like we do with our kids when they finish a tournament. What were the 3 things you did really well?
Yeah.
First question, versus like your dad did to you when you made eagle at the USAM or wherever that was. Why'd you miss a 3-footer on the 15th hole? And you're like, hey, I just hit it to 2 feet from 225 yards to make eagle to get the lead. What were the 3 or 4 things you did well? Ask yourself that, build on it. Then you can start to assess the things you'd like to work on.
I can't top that. So let's leave it at that.
Thanks, guys.
Watch us on social media, all the different forums out there. We're trying to help.
Thank you, guys, as always.
Be the right club today. Yes!